Joining us this morning is former Undersecretary of State for Political Affairs under President Bush and Harvard Kennedy School professor Nicholas Burns. Ambassador, good to see you. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Maria.
First, let's talk about what you're hearing here, your thoughts, your reaction.
Well, I think you're looking at an unfortunate picture of our White House in some disarray. The president's denigration of the Attorney General, I think, is unprecedented in modern American political history. I can't remember a single example in a Republican or Democratic administration where the president constantly criticizes a senior member of the cabinet but doesn't fire him. And so what the administration needs, obviously, they need consistency, they need a period of quiet, they need to get back to work, they need to heal the internal ideological divisions in the White House, and the president needs to support his national security team. So back to business, less tweeting, I think, would be probably the best recommendation for this White House.
Yeah, the other thing is yesterday we heard from Senator Grassley, who said, Mr. President, there is no time this year for any confirmation hearings anymore at this point. So if he were to push Jeff Sessions out, he's basically looking at no Attorney General for the remainder of the year. Of course, Rosenstein would probably move up and be acting Attorney General. Isn't that right?
That's correct, and I thought, Chairman Grassley's warning, his public warning, obviously was heard in the White House, because you're now getting reports that the White House is pulling back on the president firing the Attorney General. But the Attorney General, Maria, he recused himself for the right reasons. He had to recuse himself. That's what American ethics law dictates. And so he made the right decision in doing that. And President Trump just needs to face the fact that his Russia policy is under scrutiny. There's a bill coming up to vote this week that would sanction Russia for its interference in our elections. 419-3. It passed by the House by that margin. It passed the Senate by 98-2. It's now coming up to a vote of the full Congress. And it's the Republican leadership essentially repudiating President Trump on foreign policy, because President Trump has been very weak on Russia. And I think it's startling to see the president's own party take this step, and they're putting in a congressional review mechanism into the bill that even if the president tried to weaken American sanctions on Russia in the future, Congress could then vote to block it. We haven't seen anything like that in sanctions legislation in a long time in Washington. And so I think it does tell you this is an unusual time, a rather weak president in foreign policy, and disarray in the White House domestically. Not a good picture for the United States of America.
Ambassador, you were at the State Department for a long time, and one of the things that Secretary Tillerson said yesterday was that he would stay on as long as the president would have him. But one of the items that were a bit controversial for him, at least within the White House, was certifying the JCPOA, the Iran deal, which has to be certified every 90 days. Do you expect that to be another fight over the Iran deal, the next certification, which will come up in just another 90 days? And how do you think that affects Secretary Tillerson's tenure?
Well, I think it may be an internal disagreement in the administration 90 days from now. Look, by all appearances, the Iranians have met the terms of this agreement on the nuclear side. And so it would be very, very difficult for the United States to walk out, because Britain, France, and Germany, our partners, would not walk out with us. Iran would have achieved everything it needed from this agreement, and we wouldn't. There's a separate question here where I think the Trump administration and Secretary Tillerson have been more effective, and that is that Iran's a real troublemaker in the Middle East. It's instigating violence in Syria and Iraq and Lebanon and Yemen, and I think the administration's been right to try to push back by strengthening our relationship with the Gulf states. So I think you have to divide the Iran issue into two parts, but Secretary Tillerson, if in fact he is favoring certifying that Iran has met the agreement, I think he's right on the facts there, and I hope he does stay in office. He's someone with Secretary Mattis who I think has represented some consistency and solidity for this administration, which they badly need.
Yeah, for sure. Do you think maybe he was sending a message the other day when he decided to take some time off unannounced? It forced his office to come and say he's not resigning. He's just taking a few days off. He's going back to Texas.
Yeah, I don't know the details. I just know that he deserves some time off after the incredible schedule he's kept. Maria, I do think that Secretary Tillerson, Secretary Mattis, General McMaster, a lot of people overseas, foreign leaders, have confidence in them. And it's the one part of the administration that seems to be, these people are working together. They're unified, and I think the president ought to listen to them, and I hope Secretary Tillerson will stay in place.
Yeah, and attacking your attorney general mercilessly.
Exactly.
on Twitter does not instill confidence in the other people who serve you and people who might be called on to serve the American people in the White House in months, if not years to come.
Well, that's exactly right, and I think there's a foreign policy dimension here. The president has, of course, been constantly criticizing NATO, the European Union, South Korea. If foreign leaders perceive that the president is not loyal, even to his most loyal supporter in the cabinet, the Attorney General, I think there's a negative effect for the United States in its foreign policy in terms of our basic credibility.